Did you see any Pam Bondi, Angela?
I did see clips of her. Yeah.
I was watching that too.
40 seconds.
Anyway, the first half hour, I think we should just, talk about stuff, try to get some calls in,
Yeah.
texters, just have bat it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, Biden's decision to commute the 2,500 nonviolent drug offenders, that was probably
20 seconds.
a good thing. So.
hmm
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Hey, welcome to the Todd Allbaugh Show. Todd's off today. He'll be back on Monday. I'm Matt Rothschild here, subbing in along with my favorite co-guest host, Angela Lang, the Executive Director of Black Leaders Organizing for Communities. Angela, thanks for being with me these next couple hours.
Of course. Always happy to be here.
Yeah, it's always fun when you are. We got a great show for everybody. In the second half hour, Tourism Secretary Ann Sayers will join us. And then at 1:06, Wisconsin's new poet laureate, Brenda Cardenas, is coming on. And then in the last half hour, Civic Media's own meteorologist, Brittany Merlot, will join us to talk about the deep freeze coming this weekend and about birds, snowy owls, and other winter birds in Wisconsin, because I can't go a show without talking about bird watching in Wisconsin. So it's going to be fun. And you can join the conversation anytime by calling or texting 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. Well, Angela, it's been quite a week. How are you doing?
I'm getting over a round of COVID, and I've never had that before.
Seriously?
Yeah. Thank goodness everything is fine. I'm very grateful that I was able to work from home, and I had what I think was a relatively mild case, but that wasn't fun. But overall, it's been a wild week. Biden's final address, confirmation hearings, and what a week to try to come back to the office from winter break.
You never had COVID before, huh?
I know. Somebody said, they were like, you're one of the unicorn people that never had it. And I was like, no, I do. I may have had it in like December of 2019 because I was like really sick at a conference one time. But no, other than that, I've been very careful. And every time I've been sick, I've been, always testing and it's negative. So finally got me after almost 5 years.
Finally got that second pink line, huh?
Yep. Had to take two. I was like, wait a minute. Really?
It's not a welcome sight. It's kind of like seeing the red, white, and the red and blue behind you in the police car. So
exactly,
you don't want to get that. And so, what were your symptoms? Did you have the night sweats and all that?
I did. Yeah, I had some body aches and some chills, but it mostly just felt like a cold. A cough, stuffy nose. Definitely have had worse scenarios. So very grateful. And also shout out to the block team. They're like, you're coming back next week, right? And I was like, well, if I'm negative, and they're like, just come back next week. So they've been very supportive. It's been good. I've been able to kind of work from home and take a nap in between meetings, which has been nice too.
Well, I'm glad you didn't have a serious case of it because it can be. I've had it twice and neither time was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the first time I had a rebound case of it. And so I was out essentially for 2 weeks, but I've missed it this time around. So I'm hoping I will continue that streak, but I probably shouldn't mention it. Not that I'm superstitious or anything, but I'm knocking on wood here. There you go. So let's talk politics a little bit. We had the hearings this week. What do you make of Pete Hegseth's hearing?
I mean, what was interesting is that the things that he chose to deny, the fact that he said that a lot of questions were anonymous smear campaigns in regards to his level of drinking, him going to strip clubs and things like that. It's very telling when you're just like, oh, that was just an anonymous smear campaign. But like you didn't deny it though. Like you should have just denied it outright. So
Right. And they were, yes or no questions. And he wouldn't answer yes or no. He would just say anonymous smears. He must have said it 20 times.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us when we saw, because he denied some things, which was interesting. Because if you're going to use that tactic, I would have done it for everything. Because now there's some things you denied, and some things you're like, oh, that was just a smear campaign. Well, you denied other things. Why are you choosing not to deny this?
I can't think of someone less qualified for this job. I mean, here is a guy who's an alleged rapist. He's uh, admitted to having a drinking problem, at least in his past, and said he was going to give up drinking if he got this job, which has to be a classic for people who've had drinking problems. That must resonate at the AA meetings. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he's never run a business of any size, and he's now going to, run the Pentagon. I mean, that he's not qualified for it. But, there's one thing that hasn't gotten enough attention that really disturbs me. And that is his defense of some very unsavory soldiers who were accused of heinous crimes.
Mm-hmm.
There was one guy, Navy SEAL Edward Gallagher, who allegedly stabbed a teenage detainee in the throat to death. And Gallagher was sending texts around saying, "Got him with my hunting knife." And then he took a picture of himself with the corpse, which he was
Disgusting.
court-martialed for and convicted of that, not of killing the person, but of taking a photo with a corpse. And then what we had was Hegseth was urging Trump to pardon him, essentially, and Trump went
Mm-hmm.
ahead and then did it, even though the guys who were working with this Gallagher, at least two of them, quoted in the New York Times, two Navy SEALs by name. One guy said this guy is freaking evil, and another guy said the guy was toxic, and yet this is a guy Pete Hegseth championed, and he talks
Yeah.
about the warrior culture. He doesn't believe that soldiers should be held to the Geneva Conventions, and he's going to be running our Pentagon. I mean, this is
Wow.
there's this sadistic streak in Trump land,
Mm-hmm.
which really concerns me. Trump himself talking about, beat people up, in his rallies if they're heckling him, or the police should, use a little more force when they're throwing someone into the back of the
Yep.
patrol car. This goes hand in hand with that. And I think it's one of the reasons Trump actually likes the guy.
Probably.
And so for me, all these confirmation hearings, Trump's in charge. Trump's going to do what he wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter that much who the sycophants are, and they're all going to be sycophants. This idea that they're not going to tell the president something he doesn't want to hear is a joke. I mean, the only
Yeah.
reason they're there is because he knows they're going to tell him what he wants to hear. But
Yeah.
this idea of having the head of the Pentagon kind of saying Geneva Conventions, we shouldn't have to abide by it. It's too tough for the foot soldiers to know what to do. That's sending all the wrong signals, it seems to me, given
Mm-hmm.
the kind of scandals we've seen from My Lai to Abu Ghraib. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just going to invite more. And I don't think the Democrats said enough about that at the hearings. A couple of the senators waved at it, but they didn't really drive it home in a way that people could understand. You really had to know the background of the story of Gallagher and a couple of the
Yeah.
other guys accused of serious human rights abuses or war crimes to know what was going on. And Hegseth doesn't want U.S. soldiers to be held to any war crime standards. So that's who we got. And it looks like he's going to sail through, too,
Yeah.
unbelievably.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to another point too, and I think tying this all together is, what do we want to be as like a country? Because one of the questions that he was asked, because Trump had said, maybe you just shoot the protesters in the leg, to get them to calm down. And he was point blank asked, would you carry out an order like that? And he's like, oh, I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals. And then he just continued to talk over. And I think that's something that we as Americans should be very, very concerned about, that he did not deny that he would carry out an order like that. And given all of his background and the people that he's buddies with, I think it is incredibly dangerous in this country, especially for anyone that wants to push back or speak out against the status quo.
And remember, Trump was saying that about Black Lives Matter protesters. That's
Exactly.
who he wanted the military to go shoot people in the knees if
Mhm.
they were protesting civil rights abuses by police officers who are killing people in our streets. And so, yeah. And the weird thing both about Hegseth and Bondi, neither of them would comment on outrageous statements that Trump made.
Right.
You just mentioned that one by Hegseth, and then we had Pam Bondi, who she wanted to comment on Trump asking Raffensperger in Georgia for 11,780 votes. She said she'd never heard it, never heard the tape. It's just that can't be true. Everyone in America, especially
Exactly.
those of us who are interested in politics, heard that many times and certainly read a whole bunch of news stories about it.
Mhm.
So, and then she denied ever hearing that Trump called the January 6th insurrectionists patriots. I mean, that's a level of trying to take the American people as just being stupid.
It's
that
it's
I haven't.
gaslighting.
Yeah, it's gaslighting. It's how dumb do you think we are? That's
We
what I
saw
wanted to
it.
say.
We saw these things, and that's why I tell people all the time, it is so, so, so important that we are amplifying voices of people on the ground, whether it's Block, shameless plug, or like other organizations, because we have people that think January 6th was a school group, like, and we are actively seeing the whitewashing and the gaslighting of history in real time. And I think it's on all of us to make sure that we're setting that straight, because how could you it's one thing to say, "Oh, I just didn't see it." Well, great. You're lying. You're thinking we're dumb, or you just didn't come prepared to your own hearing. Like, which is it? Because none of it is good.
Yeah, I mean, it is George Orwell right before our eyes. They are just totally
Yeah.
rewriting history. We all watched January 6th happen live on TV as it was
Yep.
coming down. And now they're telling us it wasn't that way, that these were patriots. And we'll see how many of them, of the insurrectionists, of the traitors, uh, that Trump actually pardons on day one. I think Monday, I'm not going to watch the inauguration. I'll read the
No.
speech later. The
Yeah.
inauguration,
No.
I don't want to waste an hour or 2 hours of my time when I can read his inaugural address in 5 or 10 minutes. So,
Yep.
uh, uh, and I'm with Michelle Obama. What was your reaction to that? Michelle Obama decided not to go.
I will say that I immediately was concerned because I know she wasn't at Carter's funeral as well. And I was like, I hope everything's okay, and there's not something going on. And people are like, no, she probably just doesn't want to go. And I was like, oh, okay, well, then more power to her. Like, why are we endorsing some of these things? Like, I think showing up, and I understand that there's some elected officials, and, Rep. Jim Clyburn said that he's going to be there because he's representing his district. So I do think that there's a balance, but I do believe that Congresswoman Gwen Moore said that she wasn't going to go. And, I applaud folks who say that they're not going to go because they don't want to validate it, or because it is also MLK Day. And people would rather do acts of service as kind of a day on something else on that day than actually attend that man's inauguration.
Yeah, I just think Michelle Obama has such a Trump allergy that she can't going to be near him, and I don't blame her 1 minute for
Not at
that.
all. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm interested in what the viewers think, whether they're going to be watching, the listeners here are going to be watching
Yeah.
the inauguration or not. Give us a text. Here's a text we had from Andrew from Maine about Hegseth. With a history of drinking and alleged sexual assault, Hegseth sounds very much like someone enlisted in the U.S. military. Well, that's pretty much a broad generalization. I wouldn't abide by that. He would say, I would like to think officers would be better, but the prevalence of the term military sexual trauma tells me otherwise. I mean, that is a real serious issue, military sexual trauma. We'll be right back on the Todd Allbaugh Show. I'm talking with Angela Lang, my co-host. You can join the conversation or text 855-752-4842. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show. Todd's off today, and he'll be back on Monday. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in. I'm joined by my co-host, Angela Lang, the Executive Director of Block, Black Leaders Organizing for Communities. Let's talk a little bit about Biden. This is his last couple days in office. He's been doing a lot this week. Yesterday, he decided to commute the sentences of 2,500 nonviolent drug offenders. Let me just give a little background here from the New York Times. President Biden announced on Friday that he'd commute the sentences of nearly, I guess he did it today, of 2,500 inmates serving long prison terms for nonviolent drug offenses, the broadest commutation of individual sentences ever issued by a U.S. president. These are for offenders who received harsher sentences for drug crimes than they would under current practices. And it was a move aimed at reversing longstanding criminal justice disparities, Biden said. So, this is an issue that's been big, that, the crack cocaine versus powder cocaine thing in the 80s and 90s and during the war on crime, the war on drugs. So this was a really good thing he did, didn't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest for those that don't know. Myself and Block have been, critical of Biden considering the '94 crime bill when he was a senator. He was the author of that, and our office is in 53206, and that is one of the most incarcerated zip codes in the world because the United States incarcerates the most people. And we see how that disproportionately impacts Black and brown folks. Like, there's very few people. I don't even think I can find anyone that hasn't been touched by the criminal justice system, whether personally or their friends and family. And we also know that a lot of these are disparities around drug crimes. Now that marijuana has started to become legalized in various states, we have still people being locked up for things that are illegal, just in another state. And I think that this was long overdue. And I applaud Biden for understanding and trying to undo some of the harm that he did over 30 years ago when he was a senator.
Yeah, I think he was expressing remorse, either
Yeah.
explicitly or implicitly, for his role there. And here's a quote from him that echoes what you were saying, Angela. "This action," said Biden, "is an important step toward righting historical wrongs, correcting sentencing disparities, and providing deserving individuals the opportunity to return to their families and communities after spending far too much time behind bars." This has been a reform that a lot of people have been advocating for. I know you and your organization has been, as well as other prisoner rights groups here in Wisconsin, Expo and Wisdom, and the ACLU and a whole bunch of other good groups have been fighting on this front. And it's good that there's a little bit of progress there. So I think, it's just another example that, Biden, and he admitted this last night on Lawrence O'Donnell, was a better policy president than a communication president. Some of the policies, he did a lot of good. He wasn't a good salesman for those policies. And I think part of that was because his staff was worried he was going to screw up every time he'd get behind a microphone. And we saw how badly he screwed up during the debate as a communicator. It wasn't just that he didn't put his name on the checks, on the $1,400 checks. That's the thing that he keeps lacerating himself for. I don't think that was the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem was he didn't have a regular, continual, ongoing conversation or relationship with the voters during his presidency, which made him seem like even more distant and impaired than he was. And so there was no way for him or his successor, Kamala Harris, as a candidate to clinch the deal. And that's what a lot of people, including me, are holding against him, that not getting out of the race after the 2022 elections, or handing over the keys to the White House to Kamala Harris in 2022. And he could have just resigned and said, I built the bridge, I'm a transitional president, let Kamala Harris drive here for a while. And he didn't do that. And I think at some point he'll recognize that. He doesn't seem to have recognized it yet because he keeps saying he thinks he could have won. There's no way in the world he was going to win.
And also, I just don't, whether people think so or not, we'll never know, right? And it's not helpful to say comments like that because then people take it as a slight against Kamala, right? And like, I get it, when you've been in public office in this way, the way Biden has for the last 50 years, of course, it's going to be very, very hard for you to turn those keys over. But yeah, I think that I agree with your analysis. I think I was talking to some folks recently, and people are like, "What's the one thing?" And I would say I think that there was a disconnect because even when Kamala became the nominee, even some of our team was like, "Okay, she's vice president. That's all I know about her," right? And she had 100 plus days, a little over 100 days to really kind of get that message out. And I think there's ways, and I think this about every elected official, there's ways on the official side that people can actually continue to engage the constituents, to engage voters, even when you're not campaigning. It actually makes your campaign easier if you do that. And I
And
think
look
that
at
that was
AOC. AOC is a great example. She does it
yes.
all the time on social media, constantly.
Yes, she'll be on Instagram Live talking about, some sort of policy while like baking cookies and, and breaking it down in a very easy to understand way. And I would like to see that more from candidates. And I think that's actually going to be necessary if people actually want to earn the voter support, who I think voters are becoming increasingly more cynical by the day. So they're going to need to go out of their way to build those relationships, especially as we come into, I hate to say it, the midterms.
Yeah, and I want to know who's going to be speaking up for the Democrats. I mean, I think Kamala Harris has a right to say that I'm the putative leader of the Democratic Party and to talk more than she has. She's been too quiet, as far as I'm concerned, after the election.
Sure. Yeah.
I want to hear more from her. I want to hear more from other people who want to, get that mantle. And we did hear from a texter, Carolyn in Heartland, who said, "I will absolutely, positively not," all caps, she's getting that from Trump, I think, "watch the rapist, traitorous inauguration." So
Tell us how you
I
really
just,
feel.
yeah, seriously. But for your mental health, it may be good just not to watch it. I'm not going to watch it either. I don't recommend people. I haven't watched cable TV for more than 15 minutes since the election. I just
It's
can't do it.
hard.
Yeah,
It's hard. Yeah,
can't
no,
do it.
and find something else to do. And again, it's MLK Day, so I really everybody that is not watching the inauguration, I encourage folks to find a way to live out MLK's legacy and to do an act of service or to read and reflect and do that education. That's a much better use of time than watching that clown car circus.
Yeah, absolutely. Celebrate MLK Day on Monday rather than watch the inauguration. You're listening to Matt Rothschild and Angela Lang on the Todd Allbaugh Show, and we'll be right back with Tourism Secretary Ann Sayers. Please hang on. It's going to be a fun conversation. There you go. Ann, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
It's great to see you. It's been a long time.
Hi, guys. It's so great to see you. It's so cool.
Hi, Ann. I'm so glad you're here today.
Me too.
This
I
is so
love
cool.
it. When this came in, I was like, yeah.
I didn't know that you were Angela's boss. She told me you were her boss in a earlier life.
No. But we did get to work together. It was
There you go.
great.
It's a fun time. Yes. So good to see you.
I know, it's so good to see you. I love that you're doing this. Is this a regular thing?
Whenever Matt asked me to guest co-host, I'm there, and I'm working a lot with Dan with the recombobulation area, so he has me
Right.
on occasion too. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm all up in the civic media universe these days.
Love it. That
They,
feels right.
they
Thank
even
you.
gave her those fancy headphones. So
They did, yeah, the
I was
fancy
very
headphones and
proud.
mic. Yes, they were like, "You're
Mhm.
doing this enough. We'll spring for your own headphones and microphone."
Looks good. I don't know how much time we have, but how are you doing, Angela?
Good, good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like staring down a dark tunnel, but yeah,
it
Yep,
sure
yeah,
is. Yeah.
best we
Just
can, one day at a time.
yeah,
Those are my answers.
yeah.
I think we'll know more after Monday. I think he's going to do a whole bunch of crazy stuff on Monday by executive order. So crazy country. Election day must have been hard, Ann, right? Watching those returns come in. It was just like it was a nightmare. It was like PTSD. We're seeing this all over again from 2016.
We're not, none of this is posted, right? Just checking.
No,
This is
people may be able to listen online though, so you might want to.
okay.
Our conversation may be going over there.
It's not going over the air. There's like 9 people watching us on
Oh,
social
okay.
media right now.
It's on
Okay,
social
hi,
media.
folks.
So. But anyway, yeah, it's quite a weird country right now.
Yeah.
Angela and I were almost in tears 2 days after the election when we did a show together.
Yeah,
That was a really intense show.
the rough
It was-
show.
I thought it was good though, but it was hard to get through.
It was necessary. I think we needed it, but it
Yeah.
was
Well,
Coming in
I'm sure
1 minute.
people
All right.
appreciate the authenticity.
Oh, it was real for sure.
Yeah.
Real and raw.
yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
But then we get to talk about other cool things with you today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited you want to talk about this topic. I don't think I know Todd, but I've never been on the show to talk about tourism before, I don't think so, or anything. So I'm really glad you want to, because it's a cool public service that's happening over here at tourism.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was telling Angela, I think you're perfect for that job.
Mhm.
Thank you. It is such an honor, and I have learned so much about the state, about
Coming in 10
people,
seconds.
All right.
about government. It's so cool.
Hey, welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show. Todd's off today. He'll be back on Monday. I'm Matt Rothschild, co-hosting here with Angela Lang of Block. And we have a great guest here on the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Her name is Ann Sayers. She is in the cabinet of Governor Evers. She is the Tourism Secretary of the state of Wisconsin. And I wanted to say that if you ever need a deputy, Todd might be someone you'd hire as deputy, because he goes all over Wisconsin all the time, promoting every nook and cranny of the state. And anyway, I'm not suggesting he wants to leave civic media and join your department, but he is doing a lot to stir up tourism in Wisconsin himself. And anyhow, Secretary Sayers, welcome to the program. It's great to see you and be with you.
Oh my gosh, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me. I love that Todd's an ambassador for Wisconsin tourism. That's perfect.
Totally an ambassador. He goes on the road. Sam, what is it? He goes on the road every other week practically.
Yeah, just about. He's always exploring some new place.
Yeah, it's fun to tune in and hear him. He's from Richland Center, so he talks about southwestern Wisconsin a lot too. But he's been to Amory. He's been all over the place. So tell us first of all, how do you like your job?
Oh, it's such an honor to be in this position. And we always talk about, to bring it back to your why. And what's really neat about being in tourism is there's really 2 whys. The one is about offering these opportunities to our residents or our out-of-state visitors and encouraging them to use their vacation days to do this thing for themselves, go explore something new, be spend time with your family, be inspired by art, try a new food. It's so fun to be a part of encouraging that. But on the other side of it, it's all about the fact that doing that is good for our state. It brings revenue in, and it makes it possible for decision makers to then decide what to do with it, build some roads, improve our schools, provide some healthcare, whatever you want to do with the revenue that tourism can help generate. So there's two really important reasons why this work is so important. It's so fulfilling, and our entire agency, which is small, by the way, but all of us are really motivated by that every day.
And you've been generating a lot of revenue, record-breaking tourism revenue, right? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, in 2019, we set a record, and we were going into 2020. We're going to host the Ryder Cup, and it was going to be, but blah, blah, blah. Didn't go as we thought. But we really sprang back. We surged back faster in 21 than any of our neighbors. And then in 22, we broke a record for revenue, economic impact ever in the state of Wisconsin via tourism. And then we did it again in 2023. So tourism had two record-breaking back-to-back years, but so has outdoor recreation, which is a whole economy unto itself, and it's measured a little bit differently, but that one too. And we're proud of both, of course, but I don't think everyone knows that the Office of Outdoor Recreation sits within the Department of Tourism. So we're really trying to hold up both of these economies, and it's just great to see that people are responding to what Wisconsin has to offer and how we've been pitching it to them.
What are some of the biggest tourism attractions here in Wisconsin for people who come from out of state, for instance?
Yeah, it's there's so many answers to that question, but we follow the data. And one thing we always see is that outdoor recreation and events are at the top of the list of the reason that people come to Wisconsin. And we do both so well. And recently, we've also been adding these really large scale marquee events that Wisconsin didn't always get. So suddenly now we've hosted sort of the DNC, definitely the RNC. We had the Ryder Cup, we had the US Senior Open, and now we have the NFL draft right around the corner. And this year, last year, I should say, we had Top Chef, which is that was a big win. 12 episodes, 75 minutes each, all in Wisconsin, showing off our culinary history. Definitely put Wisconsin in a different place in the national eye of a potential visitor.
And outdoor activities, that's hunting and fishing and hiking and camping mostly?
It is, but in Wisconsin, it can also be rock climbing. It can be snowmobiling, ATV, hunt, fish. Surfing is a whole thing.
Really?
And birding, of course, Matt, which I know you care about.
Yeah, bird watching. I think there's more upside to come from birding, though. I'm of two minds because us bird watchers, sometimes we don't like to broadcast how great the birding is in Wisconsin because we don't want half Illinois coming up here and scaring the birds away.
I have the exact same problem with everything. All of our, well-kept secrets. In tourism, you don't what? Well-kept secrets. My job's to tell everyone to come look at all of this stuff, but I know what you're saying.
I'm sorry, let me just jump in on birds a second, and then I'll turn it over to you, Angela, because the birding
You
here
can't
is
help yourself,
amazing.
Angela.
I can't, no. I mean,
I love it.
there are whooping cranes in the summer at Horicon Marsh. There are golden eagles in the winter here in Wisconsin at Devil's Lake and over to on Highway 60 going west along the Wisconsin River to Muscadet. There are golden eagles. People used to not know that there were golden eagles in Wisconsin in the wintertime. And so those are some of the incredible things. There are all sorts of great birds in the state. And we'd be overrun by tourists from Chicago and elsewhere if we really broadcast it loudly and clearly. Angela, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, because there's so many great attractions, whether it's outside or inside. Obviously, I am from Milwaukee, so not to put you on the spot, but what are some of your favorite Milwaukee attractions? Whether it's a festival or a restaurant or one of your favorite things to do in Milwaukee.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is a fun question. Well, one thing that I am talking about a lot these days is the Harley Davidson Museum. Which sounds like, oh, if I'm not into motorcycles, maybe that's not my thing. It totally is. It's a real museum. It's talking about how Harleys played a role in American history through some of the wars. It has one of Elvis's Harleys there. It has a Harley that washed up on the shore after the Fukushima accident, and it kind of
Mm.
shows what happened to that bike as it traveled across the ocean. It's surprisingly engaging. I just couldn't. And now I'm a little bit obsessed with Harleys, but I guess that is, well, I'm not a little bit. I'm like a lot, and I think that's the whole point. That is the whole point of the museum. So I really encourage folks. And what was really cool, I was there. A guy pulled up on his Harley from Kansas. He had
Mm.
come. I almost thought, it's like, did somebody set this up? So just while I happen to be standing here, this guy rolls in on his license plate from Kansas Harley, and he's like, I am making a pilgrimage here to the Harley Davidson Museum.
Mm.
This is so important to me. And of course, he's going to stay in a Milwaukee hotel. He's going to take in some Milwaukee
Yep.
culinary. He's probably going to take in some Milwaukee entertainment. And suddenly, he becomes an ambassador for how amazing Milwaukee is.
I mean, what I'm hearing you say, Anne, is that you are going to get a Harley, and we're going to see you at the next Harley Fest.
Definitely. This is on my vision board.
I love that. I mean, Harley Fest is great, and I live in the area like off of Brady Street, and there's always a lot of people in the Facebook groups that are like, it's so loud, but like honestly, like the Harley folks are so nice. I've seen them come in
So
for
nice.
years. When my mom used to work at a hotel, she used to see them all the time, and she said that they were always the nicest people. And I think of that as like kind of one of the unique things that Milwaukee has. And I'm not a Harley person myself, but my friend and I, we went to Harley Fest a couple years ago because we wanted to see the Green Day concert, and we had a blast, and it was fun.
Yes.
And there's just so many things to do, whether it's like your thing or not. I think that's like the beautiful thing about Milwaukee, and by extension Wisconsin, like finding new things and then seeing like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. I learned a new thing that I
Right.
didn't know about in my own hometown or in my own state.
Right. And they are great community players, like the Green Day thing. It just brought everybody together. It's this
Hmm.
great uniter. But that's, same goes for Summerfest. Same goes for Chef Dan Jacobs, who, has received all this notoriety for having been on Top Chef, but he made that all about his home. At every opportunity, he made that about, I want to tell my story of Milwaukee. It's so special. Same for Bronzeville, and how that's inviting the entire community and the entire state and all of our out-of-state visitors in. There's always this sense of community about how Milwaukee tourism attractions operate. So it's so Wisconsin.
And the Milwaukee Art Museum is another draw. I know my brother and sister-in-law from the Chicago area come up once a year, and we meet at the art museum and then go out to a good restaurant. And it's an incredible, first of all, the architecture is just so stunning of the art museum there. And the collections are great. So yeah, there's just so much. I was talking with Earl Ingram of the Earl Ingram Show months ago, and he was responding to Republicans who stereotype Milwaukee all the time and do scare tactics about Milwaukee. He said, you should come to Milwaukee. People come to Milwaukee all the time for Summerfest, or watch the Bucks, or watch the Brewers, or go to restaurants, or go to the art museums. I mean, it is a huge attraction, I think, for people, even snobs from Chicago who come up here.
I'm glad you named the art museum, because that's one of those places where I don't want people to think, oh, I've been once and that's that.
Yes.
You've got to keep going. The exhibitions they keep bringing in are incredible, world class. They're always making updates, and I think they just doubled the size of the gift shop, which is museum gift shops are kind of my kryptonite. So love it. It's beautiful. More plans on the horizon. So definitely, if you haven't been there in a minute, get back.
Yeah, that's great. That's like a reminder for me, because I'm like, I love the art museum. Sometimes it's just like good to go on just like a random day by yourself. I'm also like a fan of just like exploring the city on my own and be like, I'm going to take myself out to dinner, or I'm going to take myself out to this museum. And I think that's like a perfect thing to do. And there's, like you said, there's always so much to do and to see all the time. And what I also appreciate is that a lot of our attractions, whether it's like museums or what have you, there's a lot of specials. So like it's affordable for families to go, and there's various like deals and stuff too. I don't know if you want to be able to talk about some of those things about how tourism is able to be accessible even for the local folks.
Yeah, we're really proud of that in Wisconsin. We find that a lot of our visitors we're a drive market. So they're driving in from Iowa and Illinois and Minnesota. And part of the reason we can be so attractive to a family who wants to make lifelong memories but not break the bank is because we have all of these offerings. And one place we score really high in the eyes of a tourist is so much to see and do. So you can really pack in a lot. And some of that is just full blown free. if not just, very affordable, from the unique places that you can stay, the kind of amazing culinary you can find at a great price point, to, outdoor recreation is often just free entry, or some of these museums, children's museums and other things like that. We tried to, Wisconsin goes out of its way to make it really accessible.
Again, the state parks are great. I know Todd Allbaugh had a whole segment on, what's your favorite state park, and people were texting in and calling in, Wyalusing State Park, Devil's Lake State Park, Peninsula State Park, you name it. It's such I've been in the state for 40 some years now, and I'm still going to a new state park. I went to Kohler Andre State Park just in the fall. It was an incredible place. And so it's amazing what we have to offer, and you're doing so much, Secretary Sayers, to promote this state, both for people in Wisconsin to enjoy it and for people out of state. I mean, you mentioned you're bringing in money. You didn't cite a figure. I saw a figure of $25 billion in 2023.
Wow.
That's a chunk of change.
It's a chunk of change. In our, just for comparison, our state agency is $18 million. It's less than 0.5% of the state's budget, holding up a $25 billion industry. And my favorite statistic is each household in Wisconsin would have to pay an additional $660 a year in order to maintain the level of government services that are maintained by the tourism revenue. So it just helps.
That's a
bring
nice
it home
return
and
on
realize
investment. Great return on
Yeah.
investment you're giving us.
Yeah.
So
And I was going to go back to what Angela said about wellness, like just kind of like taking a day and hanging out with you. That's actually a really big emerging trend right now. And Wisconsin is kind of stepping into the wellness space. And I love that for us because, I think we are kind of up against a perception of kind of being like loud, cheesy sports fans. And like, that's not wrong. And we're really proud of it. But we also have made space for, these quieter moments, just a place to recharge. And that has a lot to do with our arts and culture scene. And again, back to just having, 2 Great Lakes and the Mississippi River and more than 10,000 inland lakes and 50% of the state covered in forest. This is a great place to come and recharge.
Well, we're lucky to have you there at the Department of Tourism. Ann Sayers, Secretary of Tourism for Wisconsin. Thanks so much for being our guest on the Todd Allbaugh Show.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So good to see you, Ann.
Take care.
And we'll be right back. Maybe we'll talk about the ERA and what Biden just did about that.
Mm.
welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show. Todd's off today. We'll be back on Monday. I'm Matt Rothschild, your substitute teacher today, and my co-substitute teacher is Angela Lang of Black Leaders Organizing for Communities. It was great to have Ann Sayers on, wasn't it, Angela?
I had no idea some of those statistics. Like I, as a lovely, participant of all of the things that they're doing, I had no idea like the scale, level, and numbers of impact. And I'm just over here just going to various things because I want to, but knowing that it's actually a big driver. So I think it's just encouraging for all the listeners of like keep visiting the parks, keep visiting all these different things, especially in Milwaukee. Like I know there can be sometimes some stereotypes. We are not big, bad, and scary. There's a lot of great things to do in Milwaukee and have a good time.
Yeah, I can't think of a better salesperson for the state of Wisconsin than Ann Sayers. So it's great to have her there.
I love
We've got
seeing
a
her
couple-
travels too around like social media. She's posting pictures of like I'm fishing with like the governor's team and other stuff. It's been so great to kind of watch her Wisconsin adventures too unfold.
Yeah, there she was in Spring Green and,
Mhm.
all over the place. I gave her a birding tip for a blue grosbeak that I've never seen, but was supposed to be over there in the Spring Green area. Anyway, we've got a couple texters. The Chuckster from Racine wants to know about the Equal Rights Amendment, and we'll get to that in a second. Eric from Tosa says he'll be honoring Dr. King on Monday. It's Dr. King Day on Monday, so I'm glad he'll be doing that. Self-care will be important, he says, as the arc toward justice is going to bend backward that day. That is a tough one because, of course, that's the big Martin Luther King line about the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice.
When is it bending back? I feel like we've been bending away from justice, and I was like, okay, you can bend back now. When does that start?
When's it coming back around? Yeah, it isn't my favorite Martin Luther King quote, I got to say, because there's so many ups and downs in history. I get what he was getting at, and you got to offer people, that vision and that hope.
Yeah,
It is troublesome when you look at the last 10 years. You can look at the last 100 years, and there's been a lot of bouncing around. So Eric from Tulsa also says, what are the odds the incoming commander-in-chief brings it up? I guess that's Martin Luther King Day to brag about it. He might, there's no bottom that this guy won't touch. So he can claim anything. But you can join the conversation, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. We wanted to talk about what President Biden declared today, and that is that the ERA is ratified, he said. He believes the Equal Rights Amendment has met the requirements of ratification and therefore is now part of the Constitution, the New York Times reports. But Biden declined to order the government to finalize the process by officially publishing it, which is curious. And evidently, there'll be a bunch of lawsuits about this or not. There's a question about... they finally got enough states to come across, but some states have already rescinded their approval of the ERA. And the ERA is a flashback for me because it's, 1970s. I mean, I was in high school at that point and heard about the ERA, and then Phyllis Schlafly opposing the ERA. So it's kind of a relic. And I saw on Facebook like a week ago, someone brought up the ERA, and I didn't even know what that person was talking about. But I guess Biden did because he just went and pulled the trigger on this. What do you make of it, Angela?
I mean, I'm encouraged. I think, when I was looking at some of it, I think the Times says Biden says Equal Rights Amendment has passed, but does not force certification. So, I think some folks initially are saying that it's a little more symbolic and that we all just, like everything in this country, just need to be prepared for whatever legal fight continues and whatever legal battles. And I think that's discouraging, but I think it does send a very strong, reminder that there's going to be a lot of LGBT attacks, I think, and especially against like trans folks. And I think this just says that we need to be prepared and be ready to stand with our LGBT community too.
Definitely that. I mean, it is crazy that, it's been 50 years and we still cannot declare as part of our Constitution that the equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any other state on account of sex. That's the language of the ERA amendment. It's not that controversial, folks.
It's not, but yet here we are. We can never get anything passed. And I think also is, thinking about there's just so many, I think, marginalized folks right now that are going to be under attack, and I think it's just something that we all need to make sure that we are, supporting, whether it's women, like I said, LGBT folks, because I think once they start to go for one community, they're going to go for another. Immigrants, we've seen it in Milwaukee and ICE talking about trying to expand and build a processing center, but they want to build a fence around it so it looks a little suspicious. And I think a lot of times in these conversations, people are like, well, this doesn't have to do with me, or I'm not directly impacted. And but that doesn't mean that we still shouldn't show up for each other, because if it happens to one community and people, especially the Trump administration, can get away with taking away the rights of one community, the rest are going to continue as well. And it's with women. We've seen it. We've seen all the imagery and kind of symbolism around things like the Handmaid Tale, and is that
Right.
where we're actually going? And I think all of these things are connected, and understanding the intersections. And I'm hoping that we all, as folks that are part of pushing back and the resistance, are, going from one fight to another collectively. And it's not just forcing folks that are directly impacted to be standing alone, fighting for their own rights too.
Absolutely. We've got to show up for each other. There is a
Mhm.
great group in Wisconsin called Fair Wisconsin that is
Yes.
defending LGBT rights, and the ACLU and other groups are doing it as well. League of Women Voters, a whole bunch of groups, including Block, are doing it. And I hope everyone will join in those efforts. You're listening to the Todd Allbaugh Show. We'll be right back with the new Poet Laureate of Wisconsin, Brenda Cardenas. Will be joining us right after the break on the Todd Allbaugh Show, all across the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back. Hey, Brenda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh.
Oops. Do you hear my dog?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Do you want me to take a minute to go put her in another room?
Sure, that would be better.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I didn't expect her to.
No worries.
Okay, one moment.
All right.
Maya, come here. Come here. Come on. You can't bark. Hurry up. Come here. Come on. Come on, Mom. Come on. Come here. Come here. Hello? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I can't catch her. She
It happens. I love seeing
Hopefully-
people's pets.
I
It's
should
fine.
have put her in a room before I started. I didn't expect her to.
My cat just started meowing like 5
Oh,
minutes ago during the
yeah,
break. I'm like,
I
you're quiet
never
this whole time.
expected- I'm sorry. And she's just like, she knows I'm trying to put her in a room and close the door, so she runs away.
Yeah, sure. No worries.
Hopefully she'll be quiet now.
Hey, Brenda, Angie Trudell Vasquez was singing your praises, and she's an old friend of mine.
Oh,
And so it was another reason I wanted to have you on. But I love your
Aw.
book.
Thank you.
Thanks for sending me the PDF. It saved me a trip to the library.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Angie, yeah, she's a sweetheart. I've known her for many years as well. You know, she used to live in Milwaukee.
Yep. I remember when she was a part of the ACLU when I first started getting involved there. She was one of the people. Then I've
Yeah.
always loved being able to kind of watch her and see her poetry kind of blossom and get a larger platform too. So
Exactly. Yep.
she's
Uh-huh.
lovely.
I wrote one of her letters of recommendation when she wanted to go to grad school. Way
Mm.
back when she went to the American
1
Indian
minute.
Arts program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in New Mexico,
Mhm.
I think. She loved
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a great person. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I always like getting poets on. Angela and I had the outgoing poet laureate on a different show we did in December. So it's just kind of bookends. So it's kind of fun
Right.
for us.
Oh,
And
you
I
mean
share-
Nick?
Nick, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he's amazing. He's such a
Yeah.
fabulous poet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I shared some of the poems from Trace with Angela. So I just copied them and pasted some
Uh-huh.
over to her.
Yeah,
But I
great.
didn't send the whole PDF, but
Yeah.
But
I was
anyways.
reading them last night and I was like, oh, these are lovely and beautiful.
Oh,
And
thank
yes.
you. Thank you
So
very
thank you
much.
for being here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's so nice now with radio shows that you don't have to actually go to the station.
Mhm.
You know? I was just on Wisconsin Public Radio. That show aired earlier in the week.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Well, we will be pursuing truth and beauty, truth. But Todd's not here. It is the Todd Allbaugh Show, but I'm a substitute teacher along with Angela Lang here today. Don't shoot rubber bands at us now.
Yes.
We're going to try to keep this on the even keel. Delighted to be with you, our listeners. You can join our conversation at 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. Got a real treat for everybody this half hour because we're joined now by Wisconsin's newest poet laureate. Her name is Brenda Cardenas. She also was the poet laureate of Milwaukee back in 2010. She taught English for many years at UWM. Her latest book is out. It's called Trace, and it's really fantastic. I just read it yesterday. It was the winner of the 2024 Society of Midland Authors Poetry Award. So, Poet Laureate Cardenas, welcome to the Todd Allbaugh Show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. What was it like to get chosen as Wisconsin's state poet laureate? Were you surprised? Were you shocked?
Yes, I was surprised. I was surprised because I know that is a competitive process. One applies, and we have so many wonderful poets in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of people don't realize how rich it is in poetry. So I was pleasantly surprised, and it's kind of a perfect time for me to do this, as I just retired from teaching in May of 2024. So I have the time, right, to really put into it.
Oh, well, congratulations on your retirement too, and double
Mhm.
congratulations on this great honor. What goals do you have for yourself as poet laureate? What do you see yourself doing?
Well, the poet laureate, and when you apply, you have to put forth or suggest a project. So I see myself doing that project, which I can describe in a moment, but also really just being an ambassador for poetry in our state,
Mm.
and kind of crisscrossing the state, going to different regions when I'm invited, and even myself, sending out. Uh, um, Communications to different regions and saying, "Hey, would you like to have me visit and do X, Y, or Z?" So that I can help people to just appreciate poetry, both the reading and the writing of it, and to not see it as something so frightening or fit, or that meaning is so fixed as sometimes we're unfortunately taught when we're children, that this line has to mean this, but rather that there can be multiple interpretations, and also that to help people to wherever they're starting from in their craft, whether they see themselves as professional poets or are publishing, well, then to encourage them and work with them and perhaps collaborate with them. And if they're beginners and they've never tried this before, to help them dabble and to learn that, you can do it, right? It's not
Mm.
that hard.
I think you're putting your finger on something that I've thought about too, and that is just the way poetry is taught or was taught when I was growing up. It was taught either in a stuffy way, that poetry was really stuffy and old, and
Mhm.
or in a kind of obtuse way, that you really had to study poetry forever to be able to even understand this one poem, even if it was an easy poem like a Robert Frost
Mhm.
poem, much less something more complicated. And then then they throw some starchy old ones in there, and it was just hard to grab onto when you're a young person. And I think that deterred a lot of people, or intimidated a lot of people from enjoying what's there on offer
Mhm.
from poetry.
Mhm. I mean, I always like to say that, as poets, we're both artists, visual artists, and musicians, right?
Mm.
Because we are not every poet and not every style of poetry, but for the most part, we're painting with words. Many poets are striving to create an image, with words on the page, so that when you come to it as a reader, you can see it in your mind's eye, right? So we're
Mm.
painting with words, and we're also very conscious of the musicality of language, right? The internal music of the language. And so, we use all these sound devices that maybe we know the terms for, but, a reader doesn't have to know that, right? I'm thinking of things like, alliteration and assonance and internal rhyme and concept, right? The reader doesn't have to know that that's what that is,
Mm.
but they will hear the music, they will hear the cadences and the rhythms, right, as they're reading the poem or they're hearing the poem being read.
Yeah, all the reader has to know is that the reader likes it,
Yeah,
Exactly, exactly.
and
That
then
they're
the reader can
enjoying.
go back for more. I mean, that's
exactly.
what's
Mhm,
so nice about it.
mhm.
Yeah.
And I know I saw Ada Lee Mullen, the U.S. Poet Laureate, who spoke in Madison over the last year, and she was just trying to make it easy on. She asked, "Who's been to any poetry readings before?" And a few people didn't raise their hands, and she said, "Well, I'll make it easy for you. I'm just going to read 6 poems or something like that." So she didn't.
Mhm,
So people didn't think, "Oh, this is going to go on forever." Of course, after she
mhm.
read 6 poems, she said, "Actually, I'm going to read a few more." So that was kind of fun,
Mhm.
and she was terrific. But Tell us about your project that you outlined in your application. You mentioned that before.
Yeah. Well, I've always had a love for the visual arts. I had an uncle who was a visual artist. I have a brother who was a visual artist. And then there were just a lot of people in my family who would never call themselves artists, but who were what we might call artisans. And they would do things like make really beautiful, fine furniture. Or, I had a cousin who rode rodeo, and he made tooled all the leather, the saddles, the chaps, and did all that beautiful leather tooling, right? And I think, and for whatever other reason, I've always loved the visual arts and have done collaborations with visual artists. And so I decided to set up a project where I will have a website. It's not built yet, but in the process. And I will go to different regions, major regions of the state, and do workshops on what's called ekphrastic poetry, which is really just poetry that's written in response to, or I like to say in conversation with, or in correspondence with visual art. It's inspired by visual art. And so I will get the ball rolling by having these workshops and also having all the materials on my website, because not everybody will be able to attend a workshop. And then to start with poets, a group of poets in each major region of the state that write a poem, and then that poem is sent to a visual artist in their region who has signed up to be in the project. And the visual artist will respond in visual art, a visual art piece, and then photograph it and send that photograph to a different poet in the region who has signed up to be in the project. And that poet will again respond to that visual art, right? To that piece of visual art, and then send that poem on to a different visual artist. So if you think of it like the old game of telephone that we had when we were kids, or a relay race, right? It'll be like a relay. But if you got to think of an octopus too, because it's going to have it's going to be like maybe 7, 8 different regions of the state, right? That these relays will be going on in. And I'm going to, with the help of a web designer, make the website so that people who are interested, as they find out about it and want to be part of it, can sign up there, right? So that it's not only poets and artists who I happen to know. I mean, I'll start with people I know. They'll be maybe the first round, but that people who I don't know, right? And people, like I say, who maybe are just beginning or dabbling, of all ages, can also say, hey, I want to be part of this, and sign up. And we will see how long the relays last in each area.
And so will there be depictions on that website of the various artistic interpretations of the poem, or will there be a physical art exhibit, for instance, poetry art exhibit?
Well, what I definitely want to see on the website is to have the poems that are written for this project and the pieces of visual art that are created for this there. Right. Yes. So everybody can go to the website and see it. Perhaps we will have an exhibit at some, near the end of it, an exhibit where the poets who can come and read their. I'm not that far yet in the thinking, but I definitely want to see that the pieces up on the website. Yeah.
It's striking a bone or a chord close to home for me, because my wife and I are doing this little project, and she's a painter. She's taking up painting in her retirement, and I'm writing poems to her painting. So it's just kind of and occasionally I'll do the poem first, and then she'll draw something to the poem I've written. So
it sounds like you both need to be a part of this project, is what I'm hearing.
You both need to be a part of this project. Exactly, because you're doing exactly, exactly what I'm talking about. And that, I got the idea because quite a while ago, there was a print exhibit in Milwaukee, and one of the curators set up this kind of thing where he asked poets to write an ekphrastic poem based on any piece of art in the world. And then those poems were turned over. I was part of that project. They were turned over to printmakers, who then created prints in response to them. And then there was a big portfolio. And I thought, what if it kept going? What would
Mm.
happen if we kept seeing it, keep going? I always wanted to do that. And so the poet laureateship was the perfect place. And it's not only though because I have an interest in visual art, but also because I think it gives folks who maybe haven't written a lot of poetry yet, but really want to, it gives them a starting place. The piece of visual art becomes the trigger, so to speak, right? From which they can develop a poem, which we always hope is goes way beyond just describing the artwork, because why bother then, right? You might as well go to the art museum and look at it, but that the artwork becomes a jumping off point, or for the poem, and maybe the poem ends up becoming about something personal, but that artwork was what led the poet back to that.
That's lovely.
We're speaking with Wisconsin's poet laureate, Brenda Cardenas, and we'll talk a little bit about political poetry in a minute or two, right here on the Todd Allbaugh Show, right after this quick break.
Do you want your cameras back up? Or are you going to talk during the break at all?
Oh, that dog. How long is the break?
It's about 2 minutes.
Let me see if I can do anything with her. Maya, you cannot bark. Okay. Come here. Come here. Bye, Mom. Maya, come here. Come here. I once made the mistake of can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I once made the mistake of chasing her around the yard and saying, Mama's going to get you. And now
She wants you to chase
she
her around the
runs
yard.
away. Yeah, we do not have good recall with this dog. She behaves really well in other ways, but recall is not one of them. I hope she stays quiet now, please.
Oh, even if she barks, it's all right.
40
Yeah.
seconds.
Won't be the end of the world.
Yeah, I don't know what she thinks the whole outside belongs to her and no one should pass by.
Oh, she's policing her property.
Yeah.
15 seconds.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show. Todd's off today. He'll be back on Monday. I'm guest hosting along with Angela Lang of Block, and we're delighted to have still with us for the rest of this half hour Wisconsin's new poet laureate, Brenda Cardenas. Her latest book, by the way, is called Trace, and it's very impressive. I loved it. I read it just in the last 24 hours. But I want to get to some political poetry. Because, Brenda, I see that you are one of the editors of an anthology called Resist Much, Obey Little, Inaugural Poems to the Resistance, back in 2016 on the occasion of Donald Trump's first inauguration.
Yeah.
How weird and strange and horrifying is it for you to see that he's going to be inaugurated in just a few days?
Yeah, it's I'm obviously not happy about that. But we will survive, right? I hope. Just, we have to survive it, and we have to, work to make sure that some of what I see as some of the most horrifying things that I have heard proposed, do not happen.
And one of those is mass deportation. I mean, I saw at
Mhm.
the Republican National Convention, as I'm sure our listeners did,
Yeah.
all the signs about, mass deportation now, greatest mass deportation in U.S. history.
Mhm.
You've written a
Yeah.
lot about the immigrant experience in
Mhm.
borders and walls.
Mhm.
I mean, how do you deal with this threat?
Well, I mean, first of all, when you just think of it practically, what a massive undertaking that would be. It's so crazy that it doesn't seem even that they'll like possible, right?
Sure.
But first of all, it's extremely inhumane because many people who come here because they're fleeing. People don't just choose to up and leave their homes because what a jolly thing to do, right? That
Yeah.
is very, very rare, right? Maybe American expats going somewhere else, right? But that's very rare. People are leaving their homes because they're under threat oftentimes, threat of violence, political violence, or other kinds of violence, or there's a lot of climate migration. There's just such climate disaster that it's impossible to, might be what they call economic migration, but it's economic migration because you can't survive anymore where you are,
Mm.
right? And so it's really inhumane, but also it's very impractical. People have been so horrified by the prices of things, right? And I think that was a big part of the reason that Trump won the election was people so worried about the price of milk and the price of eggs. Well, what do you think you're going to pay for a head of lettuce if you
Mm,
deport all of the people who are picking that lettuce? What
sure.
do you think you're going to? I mean, what kind? Good luck having any salad or any fresh vegetables or any, you know what I mean? If you're
Mhm.
actually really going to deport all the, and I mean, even the farmers who are running these giant, agricorps, uh, need those workers, right? So it's interesting because a lot of I think farmers who voted for Trump and knowing this policy are people who really need the workers. And I
Mhm.
so it's ironic, but I think a lot of them think that he's really not going to deport all these people. So, and not him, it's the whole government. But
Sure.
yeah. So um, yeah, I find it, outrageous, especially too when you think of how many good things immigrants from all over the world
Mhm.
really have brought to this country. And when you think of, um, the appreciation that often immigrants have, right? I mean, I taught for a while at Wright College in Chicago on the Northwest side. And our students, we had immigrants from all over the world. We had many from Eastern Europe who were fleeing all the wars and things in Eastern Europe, as well as having a lot of, Latinos in that school. And I mean, those students worked so hard, right? I
Mm,
never had students in my life that worked as hard as those first generation immigrant students. So there's a lot of richness brought here that I mean, really, if you were to take away everything that immigrants have given to this country, we would
mm,
have we would be at a loss.
mhm.
Poet laureate Brenda Cardenas. We
Mhm.
only have about 2 minutes left. Can you read one of your poems in 2 minutes? Maybe Against
Mhm.
Insularity. I don't know. That
That's
might.
actually that's the one that stood out to me, actually. I thought it was
Okay.
very beautiful.
Okay. All right. Against insularity. Let us push air into our splenetic bubbles until they contain brimming worlds we can plunge into. Blood orange skies tinged with lavender beyond the horizon we've never traversed, across the line we've never transgressed. Time to purge our stampeding litanies, pistol-whipped plans sutured to impossible futures, manacled to metal desks and manicured lawns. Be with me, a forest of deciduous trees, lizard-wrinkled, century of rings rising to silver-streaked clouds. All our granular wreckage, our tin pan scraps, are bursting with viridian tympany. Light the cosmic fire, feed it with lungs the size of ship's bellows. Spark celestial candles. They will cluster into amethyst constellations like the lilacs we were born to be.
Oh, that's
I
so
love
beautiful.
that. I love that so much.
Oh,
Isn't
thank
that gorgeous? That's Wisconsin's poet laureate, Brenda Cardenas. Spark celestial candles. That's terrific. Thanks so much for being our guest on the Todd Allbaugh Show, and we'll be right back with Brittany
Thank you.
Merlot.
you. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Thanks again. Have a great day.
Hey, Brittany.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Do you know Angela, Brittany?
I don't.
You were on. We had you on another time. We were talking about snow and normal
I was going to say you
Wisconsin
look
weather stuff.
familiar,
Yeah.
but
Yep. Yeah. No, I feel like we don't get a chance to like chat often, but glad you're here. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you just did weather at the news break, but we probably should talk about the cold weather coming.
Yeah,
Is
and
it
it's
just-
50 degrees right now in Kenosha. Isn't that crazy?
It's
know.
so weird, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 46. I have this heavy sweater on because my other sweater's too ratty, but I don't need this heavy one.
Right? I put the Florida one on because we're
There
feeling
you go.
like so warm today. Right?
Yep.
Hey, Matt Rothschild here, subbing in for Todd Allbaugh, who will be back on Monday, and I'm joined by my co-host, Angela Lang of Block. We've been having a fun show today. I hope you've been enjoying it. We had the Wisconsin Poet Laureate on. We had the Wisconsin Secretary of Tourism, Ann Sayers, on. We've got Brittany Merlot coming right up in a second. You can join the conversation either by text or by phone, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. We've got Mark from Prairie du Sac, and then another caller. I think we'll take these two calls and then get to you, Brittany.
All right.
Mark, you're
Hey,
on.
hello. Yeah, thanks. It seems to me that all this talk of banning DEI language, banning DEI, banning education about climate change, and saying it's just a hoax and all this. I hear echoes of the old South and the banning of abolitionist literature. And maybe I'm being hyperbolic on that, but I just see echoes of that they don't want people to talk about these things anymore. They don't want to make people even think. I mean, that's the whole, they don't want people to, can't talk about critical race theory. What is that other than like the ban on abolitionist literature in antebellum South?
Thanks, Mark, for the call. Appreciate
Good
it.
point.
Yeah, I think Mark makes a good point. And also, it also reminds me of Soviet Russia, where, they're doing Soviet-style science that has nothing to do with real science. So you just never know with these guys, seriously. And what I'm worried about is this idea about patriotic education, that Trump is demanding that we return to patriotic education. What does that mean? No Howard Zinn in high schools and colleges? You can't have any critical analysis of what U.S. history has been. You get the rewriting of slavery like they've done down in Texas. It's just that's I think the direction that we're headed in here. And Mark raises a good point on that. I want to bring in Brittany Merlot, the civic media meteorologist. How you doing, Brittany?
I'm doing pretty good, riding the warm wave. How are you?
Good. What's with this? It was 46, 48 degrees when I was driving in today.
I know. Temperatures are hitting 50 degrees right now along the southern state line, Kenosha at 50. I mean, and then we're going to drop to wind chills of about negative 40. It's crazy to think about the big flip we're going through.
90
The
degree
weather
flip.
whiplash.
Yes, that's what I've been calling it.
Now, are we breaking records right now with the heat today?
Oh, good question. I haven't looked that far, but I'm probably not. We usually get, some little random warm snaps throughout, but not really a big swing like we're about to go through. Going from 50 all the way to temperatures not climbing above zero within about 48 hours.
And how dangerous is that wind chill going to be?
Oh, very, very brutal and very dangerous. I mean, we're going to be feeling anywhere from 20 below throughout the daytime to near 40 below into places, and especially northern Wisconsin, with those winds, because they're not going to quit. They're going to be gusting up to 30 miles per hour. And that is just going to here's what's happening, right? We've got a warm kind of like layer around us, right? An aura in a sense. We've got this warmth, and you try to lock it in, but when the wind blows, it takes it away from you. So that's what the wind chill is. That's why it's making it feel so much colder, because your body usually has this warmth around it. And now it won't with those winds. So pretty brutal. You can get frostbite within about 10 minutes in these conditions. So layer up, bundle up, cover all exposed skin, all of that jazz. But it's going to be a long one. That's another thing. You know, we've been getting used to these little brief cold snaps. This one's going to be deep and long. It's not going to get any warmer and above 0 until Wednesday.
And if you're out driving too, you should make sure you have extra blankets in the car in case, you know, your car doesn't start after you get to your destination.
And
Then
check on
you're-
your neighbors too. You know, check on the elderly, check on the neighbors. You know, I think all the time we always see, unfortunately, you know, someone's heat went out, or, you know, an unhoused person unfortunately froze to death. So like this is the time. This is what we're talking about. It's that bitter temperature where we got to check on people and make sure that folks are warm.
Absolutely. And don't forget about your pets too. If you're cold,
Yes.
they're cold too. I know sometimes you think, oh, they got all this fuzz and fur and they're just fine. No.
Yeah.
And also, you know, I'm a crazy bird watcher, which is redundant. But if you've been feeding birds at your bird feeder, don't stop now. They really need the food over the next 5 days. And here's a tip. If you're feeding suet, which I do in the cages, you get this, you know, suet cake you put in a cage, you hang up, the woodpeckers come to the cage. Keep doing that, but also take another bit of the suet and chop it up into little bits and throw it on the ground, because a lot of birds don't come to the cage, but they need the fat. So if you throw it on the ground, you'll get cardinals and nuthatches and woodpeckers on the ground too, but you'll also get juncos and doves and other birds that'll come on the ground. And they really need that fat and that protein first thing in the morning, or, you know, because they've had a cold night, just like the rest of us are having. And it wouldn't kill you to throw bird seed on the ground also during this terrible cold spell. And if you're worried about rodents in the suet, there is a solution to that. I have suet that is full of hot pepper. You can get these suet cakes that are full of hot pepper, because squirrels, mammals don't like hot pepper that much. And so the squirrels will not eat this pink suet that's just full of cayenne pepper. So it might cost a little more, might cost $1 more a cake if you're going to the bird store or the Farm and Fleet, but I highly recommend it. I've had no problem with squirrels ever since I've gone to the spicy suet. Who would have thought? So anyway, that's kind of a tip.
Well, you know.
Brittany, yeah, we learn things every day. Brittany, I wanted to get you on because I saw you posted on the Civic Media website earlier this week something about snowy owls. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. Oh gosh, I love owls. They're so majestic to me, and the snowy owl is probably my favorite for sure because, I mean, they live way up in the Arctic. They travel throughout Canada and they come down to Wisconsin too, but we don't see as many as we're seeing this year. In fact, this year is double than what we've seen the past 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So about 80 sightings so far throughout the state, and I've heard reports actually of one of them crashing into someone's window into the Green Bay area. Isn't that crazy? So these guys are, the DNR is saying this, what we're seeing here in the state is younger owls. They're less skilled, less wary, and they're kind of showing up in random places. So what we need to do is look at them from afar, but of course give them their space. Don't intrude and interrupt them, but they're here.
Oh, it's such a cool owl. I mean, this is the Harry Potter owl. This is the
Yeah,
white owl.
Yes.
Places that I've seen them before, I haven't seen them this year. In Milwaukee, near the ferry terminal south of downtown. If you go there and drive right up to the fence, sometimes don't go past the fence. Don't go run after them around the fence. You got to leave the owls alone, but you can park your car at that fence and look through. I've seen them on top of the building in there and also on the ground. They'll sit on the ground. I've also seen them at Goose Pond in southern Columbia County. There evidently has been a snowy owl in New Glarus. Go down to New Glarus, get a beer, and look for the snowy owl. And also Green Bay along the lake shore is a good place to see them too. And then just inland from Green Bay in Freedom, Wisconsin, which is a great name, Freedom, Wisconsin. They've had a lot of snowy owls historically there. And then look on telephone poles along rural roads. Sometimes they're there. Sometimes they're on the farmers' buildings too. So it's it's quite a sight to see. I'd never seen a snowy owl in my life before I'd come to Wisconsin. I'd been bird watching for 20 years. So it's an awesome sight. But as Brittany said, you got to use your manners here because
Yeah.
these young birds, the reason they're down here is they couldn't find enough food up north. And if you're harassing them, if you're getting real close to them, they're not going to be able to find the mouse or the vole that they're looking for, and they're going to starve to death. And so, bird watchers and nature photographers sometimes are at loggerheads because the nature photographer wants to get real close and get the great picture. And bird watchers, we want other people to be able to see the bird. So if you're the photographer running into the field, we hate you. I hate to say it. We do not like you disturbing that bird because you're gonna hurt the bird and you're gonna hurt the rest of us who are trying to go see that bird. So keep your distance. Don't feed the bird. Don't throw mice out. Like there were people throwing mice out at a great gray owl that was in Madison when we had an invasion of great gray owls from Canada before. So anyway, treat the owls with respect. Enjoy them. They're really a neat bird. One year there was an owl on John Nolan Drive here in Madison, a snowy owl. I never saw it. We drove down, my wife and I, 10 times to see the owl on John Nolan Drive, but it wasn't there. And another winter, there was an owl on top of a downtown building here in Madison. So we do get them here in Dane County. It's been seen, as Brittany says, 80 of them all over the state. So keep your eyes out, especially when you're driving the rural roads or you're on the lakefront. So it's just a cool owl. It's one of the cool birds that there is here in Wisconsin. Other birds you like, Brittany?
Oh, I love the bald eagle. Definitely.
I saw one right over my house in southern Dane County the other day.
Oh, nice.
And then one day when I was just driving on Highway MM just south of Madison, Rimrock Road, also called, there was two bald eagles, male fully adult male eagles. Beautiful. We just got a text from Mark from the SAC years ago at the Brule River State Forest. He saw a great gray owl fly right past him. That's amazing.
That's cool.
Oh,
Yeah, that's an
towards the
amazing bird.
Brule. That's where I see a ton of bald eagles. If you take that Highway 53 from Eau Claire up towards Superior, oh my gosh, you're guaranteed to see at least a couple of them.
Yeah,
Wow.
so, in
Reminder,
winter,
keep your eyes peeled when
Yeah,
you're driving. Yeah.
and also look for hawks, not only the red-tailed hawk that
Yeah.
is so common in Wisconsin, but a Canadian hawk called a rough-legged hawk has come down into Wisconsin, typically does in the winter. It's slightly bigger than a red-tailed hawk, which is a big hawk itself, and it's got splotches of black on its belly, which is one way to identify it. It's really cool hawk, rough-legged hawk. I don't know why that name came in, but there you have it. They're all looking for food. So again, keep your distance, enjoy the birds. Brittany, tell us what we have in store. We got cold weather through Wednesday, and then we're going to get a little warm up.
Yes. So we are going to be falling sub-zero overnight tonight for a good chunk of the state. And by tomorrow, the entire state is going to be feeling below zero. Our temperatures will hit the single digits to teens, but those winds are going to be feisty. Then our actual temperatures do fall. We fall double digits below zero into the northern part of the state, single digits below zero in the southern part, and the winds keep going. So wind chills anywhere from 20 to 40 below throughout the evenings and even into the daytime. Some of those places are going to stay brutal cold. So bundle up, stay warm, hunker down. I don't think I'm going to do anything this weekend, to be honest with you. I don't even want my car out in that, testing the battery. I hope it turns over. I don't want to, no.
Yeah, I'm wondering
So-
about that. I was supposed to go somewhere on Sunday. I'm not sure I'm gonna. But, this used to be called winter in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
We've been lucky. We haven't had, depending how you look at it, it's crazy, the global effect of global warming. But, it's a cold front coming. When I got here 40 years ago, we lived in Southern Columbia County in our first house. There were 70 inches of snow, and winter went from November 15th to about April 1st.
Yeah.
And we'd always get, 5 days of this bitter cold where
Mhm.
the temperature never came above zero. So it's just kind of a reminder. And
We're
if
Wisconsin
the
strong. We got
yeah,
this.
yeah, we can handle it. The inauguration, they're going inside in Washington, D.C. because it's just going to be mid-20s.
Yeah, when I looked it up and I was like, oh, I expected what we were expecting. I thought it was the same thing. And I looked it up and I said, oh, okay. They're not from Wisconsin, clearly.
Nope.
No, they can't do cold over there. They can't do
No.
snow either. I was there for 2.5 years after college, and if there's 1 inch or 2 inches of snow on the ground in Washington, D.C., it shut the whole town down. It was
Wow.
just crazy, yeah.
Wow.
They don't have the Wisconsin spirit over there in
Very
Washington,
different.
D.C. So anyway, well, I'm glad anyway that the weather might be ruining Trump's huge event there. So that's just good karma anyhow. But Brittany Merlot, thanks for being on here on the Todd Allbaugh Show.
Of course. Thank you
it's
so much
always
for
great.
having me.
It's great
Yes.
hearing. I always
stay
love
warm.
hearing your weather forecast and the way you use good writing to convey powerful images. As an
Thank
old
you.
editor, I look for that.
Oh, I
So
appreciate that.
yeah, that's kind of cool. They're lucky to have you. So we'll be right back here on the Todd Allbaugh Show. You can call 855-752-4842 or 855-75-CIVIC. We have one caller on the line. We'll get to you as soon as we come right back. Hey, Matt Rothschild with you here for the last little stretch here of the Todd Allbaugh Show. Todd's off today. He'll be back on Monday. It's been so much fun sitting in here for Todd with Angela Lang of Block. We've had a fun time talking with the Poet Laureate of the state of Wisconsin, Brenda Cardenas, with the Tourism Secretary, Ann Sayers. And then Civic Media's own, Brittany Merlot. It was always fun talking with her. And you can join the conversation yourself, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. Call or text. And we've got Joe on the line. I always look forward to hearing from Joe when I'm driving around listening to Civic Media. She always has good questions and points to make. What's on your mind today, Joe?
Well, I'm on to suet. You were talking about suet earlier on and birds, and I just, I'm crazy for birds, and I think that so many people in the state are because it is such a rich place with the Mississippi Flyway and the Flyway in Lake Michigan. It's just a fantastic place for birds. I had never heard, Matt, of this idea. Excuse me for being out of the loop here, of adding the red peppers, some sort of red peppers. So you have sort of a pink suet block, if you will. And you had said that the squirrels will not go for that because mammals don't like that. They taste the pepper and they don't like it. Birds are not affected by it. And then you had said that you can actually take those suet blocks, if you will, and break them into chunks and throw them on the ground. Man, those are great tips. Thank you so much. I had, been kind of shy about using the suet blocks and putting feed on the ground, but man, I'm going to go out and get some of those before the cold hits. And I wanted to ask you, as a birder, if you have ever done anything with these built-in cameras into the bird feeders. They call them Bird Buddy or whatever they are. So you can see these close-ups of birds and get a better assessment of what's going through your yard and track them that way. Have you had any experience with that at all? Do you like those?
I haven't tried it, but some friends were showing it to me. You have a bird feeder that's, and then that bird feeder will relay the photo of the bird to your phone, tell you that, show you the bird that's there and identify the bird for you that is feeding at your bird feeder. So that's pretty cool. You can get that at some bird stores too. But yeah, back to the suet, red pepper suet. It's also sometimes called super suet. You can get it at, I think, Farm at Fleet or Wild Birds Unlimited and other bird feed stores. And yes, chop it up. I actually dice about a quarter of one of these suet cakes every morning. Especially when it's cold, when it's 0 or below, and throw it on the ground, and they're very happy to see it.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for the tip. Appreciate it so much. There's going to be some chubby little birds in my backyard. Thank you so much.
Well, they'll thank you.
Love that.
That's the tip of the day.
Yep, there you go.
Great.
Cayenne red pepper suet. You won't be feeding the squirrels, because before I was losing half my suet cake to the squirrels.
Sure.
And the money too. I didn't want to be wasting money, and I didn't want to be just feeding these fat squirrels. Though, all God's children got to eat, as I say. But still,
squirrels eat all sorts of stuff though too. They don't need to eat your bird seed,
Yeah, they're doing fine.
They got other options.
Unless one of the hawks get one. I saw a red-tailed hawk come get a squirrel once. That was kind of rewarding.
Oh wow! Instant karma, I guess.
Nature's harsh, and then on the flip side, it's painful for a lot of us bird watchers to see Cooper's hawks or sharp-shinned hawks come and get birds off the feeder or off the ground where you're feeding them. These are hawks that feast on backyard birds. They love the backyard birds. So it's tough out there.
Yeah,
nature can be cruel.
Survival. Sounds like a metaphor for something. I don't know what, but something.
You can draw a lot of metaphors there. But if you've been feeding the birds a lot and the birds have been there all the time, and all of a sudden you don't see birds, usually there's a hawk in the area. Or another tip is, if you've had if you filled your bird feeders and no birds have come to those feeders in several days, either there's a resident hawk or you need to clean out your bird feeder, because the bird seed has gone bad, and the birds can detect that. And so they won't come to your feeder, even though there's seed in it, because the seed has gone bad. So you should really clean your bird feeders, every couple of weeks, every month anyway. And make sure to wash your hands. There is this bird flu going around. I read something that you probably can't get it from the songbirds or the little birds that are at your feeder. But I'm either wearing gloves or washing my hands every time I go put bird seed into those bird feeders, because you want to make sure you don't catch anything. But I think you're safe right now, keep feeding the birds, and especially this next week with the sub-zero weather. Make sure you throw seed on the ground. Make sure you got suet out there. Chop it up into little pieces so the little birds can get at it. And also another reason to throw it on the ground is birds are bullies. There'll be a big woodpecker on the suet cake, and the little woodpeckers can't get there until the big woodpeckers stuffed his face. And same thing, the blue jays will try to hog the food too. So throw it out there so that there's plenty of food for everybody, especially in the mornings when they're just waking up and they're freezing to death and they need that protein. So what do you got on your mind? Anything fun for the weekend, Angela?
It's cold. I think I'm just gonna stay at home and just watch a bunch of like TV shows and random movies. I was in a Disney kick the other day. I watched the original Lion King. I watched Hercules. So I'm just gonna keep doing more of that and staying warm. But Yeah, no, I just think the show was great. And I feel like a constant line throughout the show was like, explore Wisconsin, take care of yourself. And, there's so many different things to do. So even in the winter, I find myself hibernating. But, with Secretary Sayers there, I'm like, okay, yep, I need to do more outside. And there's a lot of cool things to do in my neighborhood, in my city, and in the state too. So I'll be thinking about some of that stuff when it's warmer, though, because I hate the cold.
I hear you. We got a couple textures. I have a block of suet out. We keep frozen. We grate it. Grating the suet. I love
Ah.
that. Corn cakes out. Someone says walnuts. And someone says, be careful, Niger seed feeders, they go bad. The Niger feed goes bad. So those are some of your bird watching tips.
All right.
Anyhow, thanks so much, Angela, for co-hosting with me.
Thanks for having
Sam,
me.
thanks so much for handling everything. Thanks to the callers and the texters. Thanks to Tourism Secretary Sayers, Wisconsin's Poet Laureate Brenda Cardenas, and Civic Media's own Brittany Merlot. Stay tuned for Maggie Dawn.
And your day will come. Keep banging on your drum.